Welcome back. Episode 3, TUA and O edition. This is the Marty&Party podcast. To my right, for the third week in a row, special guest, Dow with me.
What's good?
And, of course, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, red hair and everything, Party.
How's it going, fam?
We got a great episode for you today. We're going to go over some draft busts. We're going to talk about how NFL teams should draft and what they're looking for. We get into a little bit of a debate about a couple of these busts where we listen to Pat have his take. We go obviously into our best bets. And in between, we talk a little Jets football. We talk a little Tua Tagovailoa, Joey Burrow over. Justin Herbavola. And that's about it. Take care, have a fun listen, and look forward to hearing everyone on our Twitter mentions.
It's the Marty&Party podcast, presented by 4011 Sports.
Now I'm going to read you guys a couple number one overall picks. I'm going to explain why I'm doing it later, but all I need from you guys is a simple answer, either bust or not a bust. I'm going to start with 2007, Jamarcus Russell.
Bust.
Jake Long.
Not a bust.
Bust.
Matthew Stafford.
Not a bust.
Not a bust.
Sam Bradford.
Not a bust.
Bust.
Cam Newton.
Not a bust.
Not a bust.
Andrew Luck.
Not a bust.
Bust.
Crazy.
Eric Fisher.
Not a bust.
Bust.
Oh my
Jadeveon Clowney.
God. Not a bust.
Not a bust.
Jameis Winston.
This one's kind of tough, but I'll go bust.
Bust.
Now, I know these guys haven't had a lot of time to prove themselves in the NFL, and I think they're all still playing under their rookie contract besides these next two guys. I just remember they signed a deal. Jared Goff.
Not a bust.
Not a bust.
Baker Mayfield.
Not a bust.
Not a bust.
And I skipped Myles Garrett, so we'll go back to him.
Not a bust.
Definitely not a bust.
Kyler Murray.
Not a bust.
Not a bust.
And I think we all stand pretty firm that Joe Burrow is pretty good at football.
He's looking good so far.
Now, what I wanted to get to with the NFL draft was a lot of times I hear people talking about how a guy is a bust, and they use the term really loosely. I hear it a lot with guys like Jadeveon Clowney, who I think his whole career he has been a really good pass rusher. And I wanted to drive home the point that I don't think when NFL teams are drafting players, especially at the number one overall pick, they're necessarily looking for the highest ceiling. I think with the number one overall pick, sometimes you're looking for someone who has the highest floor. Aaron Donald was in that draft with Jadeveon Clowney, and he by far has panned out. But his prospect at the time, he was a small defensive tackle, and there was a lot of room to be concerned. Is he going to be able to break through offensive lines in the NFL, which he's all proven that he can, but when you're drafting with that number one overall spot, I think that it's a little bit more, you're more targeting the sure thing than maybe the best potential thing.
See, I think that varies from team to team based on ownership, management, state of your team. For example, I don't think the Texans took Jadeveon Clowney number one just because they thought he had the highest floor. I think it's because he had the potential to be, a Lawrence Taylor type. They were calling this guy a generational talent, right? He ran a 4.6 40 at 270 pounds. That's unheard of. As far as pass rushing goes, yeah, he hasn't produced, but I would not call him a bust. He's an impact player. He makes things happen, even if it doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. But one thing I got to get after here is Pat for calling some of these guys a bust. I mean, Jake Long, he went after Eric Fisher. I mean, even Andrew Luck. What's he thinking?
Well, especially with the Eric Fisher and Jake Long pick, it really sounds like Pat has a problem more with the position than actually the player themselves. Is that correct, Pat?
There have been 3 offensive tackles taken in first overall pick in the last 50 years. Jake Long, Eric Fisher, and Orlando Pace. Orlando Pace is a Hall of Famer. Jake Long is not a Hall of Famer. Eric Fisher is not a Hall of Famer. If you're taking a guy on the offensive line with the first overall pick, you need him to be Orlando Pace. You can't have him be a mediocre left tackle. You go top 5 left tackles back in 2008, Jake Long's not there. You go top 10 tackles right now, Eric Fisher's not there. There's no reason to take a tackle with the first overall pick when Miami definitely needed a quarterback. When the Chiefs definitely needed a quarterback. Now, it took them 5 to 6 years for them to actually get it right, and he actually win a Super Bowl, but it's all Patty Mahomes. It has nothing to do with Eric Fisher.
Oh, hold on there. Mitchell Schwartz allowed no sacks last year for the Chiefs, all right? He's a tackle. Granted, did not go number 1. But, Jake Long, you were talking about mediocre. He made the Pro Bowl each of his 4 seasons in Miami and was named to a first-team All-Pro. I mean, that is not the definition of a bust.
Well, I stand with Pat here, too. I think that when you take offensive lineman first overall, and I believe it was Dave Gettleman when he selected Saquon Barkley, said we're looking for a gold jacket kind of player at this draft pick.
Terrible comment.
And if you're going to go out and get an offensive lineman, probably the most boring position in football to draft, no one gets excited for offensive linemen. The guy's better be an all-pro player. He better be a top 5 offensive lineman for years to come. And even at that, offensive linemen, they come out of everywhere in the draft. It's not always the first-round picks that play well. I think it was the Atlanta Falcons, last year, had 5 first-round picks on their offensive line, and the offensive line didn't look so good. So I don't think that to get a good offensive lineman, you have to be searching the first round.
Back to your point also with the Pro Bowls. In his first 4 years, the Dolphins were also under 500 3 of those first 4 years. So his Pro Bowls meant absolutely nothing.
I mean, Joe Thomas was the best left tackle in football for years. The Cleveland Browns sucked.
Yeah, they didn't take a quarterback for him. That's on them. All their quarterbacks didn't pan out. A quarterback in that pick is better than Jake Long.
You see, I'd be more willing to buy Eric Fisher as a bust than Jake Long. Eric Fisher still starts for the team. He's a consistent tackle. I mean, he's not good, yeah, but I think it kind of goes back to what Matt said. They weren't going for highest potential. Right there, it's very clear they went for highest floor.
And I do agree. I do like highest floor. I think a lot of NFL teams would side with me on that a player with the highest floor, especially when you're drafting outside of only offensive linemen, but when you're looking at quarterbacks, highest floor, the safe pick, the Alex Smiths of the world, they're always going to get picked number 1 overall instead of players like Patty Mahomes and guys that show a lot of tendency to potentially not be in the league 5 years.
Now, I got a question. If the Miami Dolphins were going to redo the pick, do you think they take Jake Long, what they know now, or do they take Matt Ryan, who went 3?
That's a good question.
Definitely Matt Ryan.
Exactly.
I think that's a good question.
If you had to redo the Eric Fisher pick, the Chiefs are not taking Eric Fisher again.
But
they are taking a lineman. They're taking Lane Johnson.
And every single NFL draft, you're going to get a reorder. Not, when was the last time the number 1 overall pick actually panned out to be the best player in the draft?
Very true.
You yourself, the only draft that I can think of that the best quarterback or best player in the draft was Andrew Luck, and you yourself called him a bust. So I don't think that I can think of any draft since Peyton Manning that was the clear number 1 overall pick.
I mean,
Andrew Luck is a bust.
Russell Wilson, I would consider better than Andrew Luck, considering he's playing. But I would not call him a bust.
I don't think when Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck were playing at the same time, I don't think anyone was really saying that Russell Wilson was better than Andrew Luck. I mean, Russell Wilson, I don't think up until this point has any MVP votes.
Which is ridiculous.
He should.
But I can tell you one thing, Andrew Luck definitely does.
Andrew Luck also retired.
He retired because his team couldn't protect him. The same reason that Peyton Manning had 12 neck surgeries that led him to find his way on Denver. That's more of Indianapolis' inability to keep anyone standing up straight behind them until last year.
They literally had to wait until their franchise quarterback retired before building an offensive line. It's a joke.
Ownership takes part in being a bust. There's a reason why a lot of Browns picks are going to be busts. It is because they may not have the talent. It's also because the ownership and coaching is never good in those places. Same thing with Indianapolis. Indianapolis refused to build an offensive line for Andrew Luck. He produced fine. He didn't wow anyone. He was 500 in the playoffs. He got smacked by New England every year.
Who was that receiver they took from Miami for him?
Philip Dorsett.
Oh my lord, what a bad
Who they ended up giving up to the Patriots for a quarterback for a year. But let's move on. Recent news in the NFL: NFL owners agreed to potentially add an 8th team into the playoffs this year, if not all 256 games are played. I was honestly a big critic of the NFL even moving to 7 teams, and I think that when you get to 8 teams, it's getting absolutely ridiculous per conference. I think that the NFL season, the best part about football over baseball, over hockey, and over basketball was how hard it was to make the playoffs, and I think that a 16-game season mixed in with this very tight playoff picture made every single game huge. When, Pittsburgh plays Baltimore twice a year, those games have lasting impacts on not only who's the best team in football, but are any of these teams actually going to make the playoffs. Adding an extra 1 or 2 teams really devalues that. Now, if you're the 8th place team, I'm sure if you look the last 5 years, the 8th place team every single year did not deserve to be in the playoffs. I want to get Brian's opinion on this.
It's pretty clear that it's all about money, right? Because, like you said, what makes the NFL so great is that every single game matters. Why do you think it takes until week 14, week 15 for some teams to be mathematically eliminated from the playoff hunt? Because there are so many implications, right? There are many ways for you to make the playoffs, but it never feels unfair. Now I feel like it's kind of cheap. Making the playoffs doesn't really hold the same value it would if you're going to 8.
And what about the fact that you're taking away the first 2 byes? So the first place and the second place team in this new plan would not have a bye. So now you're the first place team in the beginning of December. You're not really playing for anything. You're just playing for home field advantage, which I'm sure everyone is aware by now. In the NFL, isn't that big of a deal. Teams lose at home all the time. And I think that it's an absolute joke to say that, a team like the Steelers or a team like the Ravens are going to go trot out their entire starting lineup in the last 2 weeks of the season, risking them getting injured for literally no benefit.
You see, this 8-team playoff thing will only become a reality if the NFL cannot schedule a Week 18, right? Due to COVID restraints and all of that. So this shouldn't be an issue going forward, right? I hope we're not talking about 8 playoff teams, for ever, Like, that would be terrible.
And I'm absolutely disgusted that we're even talking and accepting a 7th. But let's move on.
Well, one thing about the 7th is it makes, fighting for the 1 seed a little more important. Because you're really fighting for that bye.
But when has a 1 seed ever mattered?
I mean, it helped the Kansas City Chiefs.
It doesn't matter this year. There's barely any fans at the stadium.
It's an absolute.
In years past, it definitely mattered.
It's so hard to win a playoff game in the NFL, and now that you're going to take the first and second place team and have them play for their lives, the first week of the playoffs, I think it's a real disservice to teams that are going 13-3. There should be some kind of reward for not only winning your division, but also going out and having a fantastic season where you're in the top 4 teams in the NFL.
Well, fingers crossed it won't come to that, right?
I agree, but let's move on to the next subject. I think we've watched now we've seen Tua Tagovailoa play 2 games. We've seen Herbert and Joe Burrow play a couple games. And I'll tell you what, I was sitting there watching the end of that Arizona game, and I'm sitting and I'm thinking, is this draft class of quarterbacks the best crop we've seen since 2004? I know it's only a few weeks. I know it's a really small sample size. But I think all 3 of these quarterbacks, and we haven't even seen Love yet, but I don't think you're gonna see Love for a couple years, and he's probably not gonna be wearing a Green Bay jersey when you do. But I don't think I've been this excited for a crop of quarterbacks after a few games as I am with this group of kids.
I think, the fact that there's 4 of them starting and they're all playing well makes the Jordan Love pick look so much worse.
Yeah, I mean, it was a clown pick. They could have taken a receiver for Aaron Rodgers. They could have taken a lineman. They could have taken a defensive player that could actually help the team now. They're taking a quarterback that literally won't start for the next 5 years while Aaron Rodgers is under contract.
But what do you guys think about the quarterbacks that you're actually seeing on the field? Let's get away from Love because I think that's a episode within itself. But what have you seen out of Joe Burrow and Tua and Justin Herbert that has made you guys either excited or a little cautious moving forward?
Well, for Joe Burrow, I think he's performed very well. He's showing a lot of poise in the pocket. I mean, the entire right side of that Bengals offensive line is trash. It's garbage. They're just moving turnstiles, right? But he has still played very well, and the Bengals are in it. There's only one game they haven't actually been in, and that was the Ravens game.
Justin Herbert has an absolute cannon of an arm. The only thing that I am worried about with him is there was a couple plays where he just takes unnecessary hits. One specifically was against the Chiefs, his first game, where he took a brutal shot by a linebacker. The linebacker actually knocked himself out on the play. It's a classic rookie thing. Rookies. They don't know when to go down. They don't know when to get out of bounds. They just get hit.
Well, they're also used to being the biggest guys on the playground too. I mean, they're used to playing where they're the most athletic guy, the strongest guy, and now with the NFL, with these NFL linebackers, I think they learned pretty quickly that running into a linebacker at full speed is a little painful, and it's probably better to just slide and take the guaranteed yards.
Very true. I mean, Justin Herbert's 6'6", 230, 240. He's a big boy, right?
Now, getting back to Tua. Tua had an awful game one. He had a couple of good passes, but nothing very exciting to watch.
I have to stop you there. I mean, he's managing the game one. Jared Goff turns over the ball 3 straight times. Tua doesn't have to do anything but not lose the game for his team.
I would definitely say Tua's the least impressive.
Tua also has the least amount of games. I loved him last week against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I mean,
Cardinals overrated, man. That was
took their money line. I made a boatload of cash on the Dolphins. I have nothing but praise for Tua, but he objectively was bad his first week. Totally redeemed himself last week, and I think he will work and get better as the season progresses.
So now I know Brian was talking to me before the show, and I think it was a really good question of why are quarterbacks now given such little time to develop? Not just, I don't think he was just talking about develop as in holding a clipboard, but how come we don't let these quarterbacks play it out? I know he's a little frustrated seeing Sam Darnold's time most likely ending in New York only after 3 years. I think we saw Josh Rosen get quit on after not even a 16-game season. There's a laundry list of quarterbacks that have not been given the correct amount of time. I mean, Dwayne Haskins, I agreed with the benching, but I know the guys here don't. And I don't think 10 years ago in the NFL you saw that. I think that 10 years ago in the NFL, teams kind of maybe held on to the quarterbacks a little too long instead of a little too short.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the thing now. They're way more afraid of giving up on a guy too late than they are giving up too early, right? See, my issue is people are already talking about getting rid of Daniel Jones for the New York Football Giants. He's in his second year. I mean, yeah, the team hasn't performed well, but does that mean you should quit on him? Absolutely not. But the main thing, I think, is the reason these guys are getting less time could be because of job security, right? Could be that you're trying to win. But I also think it's because you've had some of these guys, the Patty Mahomes, the Deshaun Watsons, that come out and make an impact right away. Even Lamar, who wasn't the greatest quarterback, but he did make an impact right away.
See, the difference is, though, the teams that drafted Deshaun Watson, Patty Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they were in better positions than any quarterbacks taken early. So, like, Daniel Jones was taken 6th, and the Chiefs traded up to 10 to take Patty Mahomes. So they weren't originally in the 10 spot. They weren't a bad team. They took Patty Mahomes with Alex Smith at quarterback. Now, I think the reason that there's not a lot of QB development is not coach stability, but turnover rate. So if you take Dwayne Haskins, for example. Dwayne Haskins had got a new head coach year 2 in his team. Apparently, Ron Rivera didn't like what he saw in training camp. What little he had, went with his gut and put in Kyle Allen and Alex Smith. Both guys have not done anything that is exponentially better than what Dwayne Haskins did. Dwayne Haskins had his best game of the year and then lost his job. Alex Smith threw 3 interceptions last week to the New York Football Giants, who we were just ripping on.
Talking about early benchings or questionable benchings, the Mitch Trubisky one really got me scratching my head because I'm not the biggest Mitch fan, but when they benched him, that's not the moment I would have done it, right? The week before, he just came back from a 21-point deficit in the fourth quarter.
It's now week 9 in the NFL. The New York Football Jets, since we're calling every team football before their nickname, are on a bye. And the head coach, Adam Gase, is still sitting in the main office of the New York Jets facility.
One Jets drive. He's still there.
What do you think, as our resident expert Jets fan, what do you think is going on in New York?
The Jets will lose this bye week if they do not fire Adam Gase. Okay? If Adam Gase is still the coach, yeah, they lost.
Well, it's already Wednesday. Well, they could have fired him Monday night.
I told you before the season started, I was scared. People were telling me, hey, if he goes 0-4, they'll fire him. I'm like, I don't know, man. Okay, if he doesn't have a win by the bye, they'll fire him. I'm like, I'm not sure.
Let's not forget the fact that there's also video of their GM sleeping during the Monday Night Football game.
God,
The team is just a mess. But I think last year I wasn't a fan of the idea of firing Adam Gase. And I hear a lot of people now talking about, they're keeping Gase because they're losing and the Jets are trying to tank. One thing I think in the NFL is teams don't try and tank. Players are playing for contracts, coaches are playing for jobs, general managers are playing for their
not Joe Douglas.
Are playing for their jobs.
Before the season started, Joe Douglas took it as an insult that teams around the NFL were quote unquote sleeping on the Jets. They said we're a much better football team than people think. Yeah, no you're not, Joe. Wake up.
No, and you had your best team performance with Joe Flacco at quarterback, a guy that was now given up on 2 franchises, and rightfully so.
The team looks so much better without Adam Gase calling the plays. It's crazy. And they are still by far the worst team in the NFL. So what does that tell you? But the fact that Joe Douglas is keeping Adam Gase around just for like a human sacrifice so somebody can pin it all on so he can sleep during the games, I don't think he's the guy for the job. What's he shown me?
So now I wanna get your 3 opinions. I want a % chance that these guys will be the head coach of the Jets in the 2021 season, just from you, Brian. I'm going to start with Adam Gase. What's the % chance that Adam Gase is the head coach of the Jets next year?
50%. It's 50-50 right now. You know why? Christopher Johnson, acting owner, came out after week 1. He said, I have faith in my offensive-minded coach. I have faith in his brilliant offense that, will do good. Where is he now? Hiding his head in the ground. He does not want to publicly admit his mistake. He does not want to admit that he's absolutely clueless at his job.
Next % chance, we only have 50% to work with, since there's a 50% chance it will be Adam Gase. So let's start with the next one. I think my head coaching favorite for the New York Jets, John Harbaugh next year.
John?
Or Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, I was going to say, if we got John Harbaugh, it'd be, the things I would do to get a real coach here. Jim Harbaugh, wow. Personally, I don't like it. I don't think he's even on the Jets' radar.
I think this would be a home run if they bring back Jim Harbaugh. He has a history of turning franchises around. He turned San Francisco into a perennial playoff team. He worked really well with Colin Kaepernick. He worked really well with Alex Smith, 2 guys that after he was no longer working with them, Alex Smith looked pretty good over with the Chiefs.
I mean, the 49ers were built when he got there, right? He didn't do anything spectacular. He had a basis of a team, and then when things got bad, he ran away, and then they had to tear it all down and build it up.
I think things got bad because he left it. But then he comes to Michigan, a team that was an absolute dumpster fire, and turns them into a relevant team, just relevant enough for their fans to start thinking that they deserve the right to beat Ohio State, which I don't think they ever will.
Speaking of Ohio State, that's no longer a rivalry.
No, it's not. But
Jim Harbaugh gets absolutely
It's an ass whooping.
smacked every year. Urban Meyer's gone. His daddy is gone. And still, he can't even beat their off-cast stepson, Ryan Day.
But now let's get to the third one, and I think my second favorite option for the
0%
Jets.
chance if you couldn't get that.
He gives
0%
He
chance
gives it
for
a
Jim
0% chance. And now let's get to the last team. I want to just go with anyone in the front office or the head coach or the coaching staff, anyone in Miami right now. What's the percent chance that anyone is head coaching the Jets that's currently with the Miami Dolphins and that great turnaround that they're having?
0%.
So who do you think? Now, who do you think, since you gave me 2 0%, who do you think will be the head coach of the New York Jets next year if the guy's name is not Adam Gase?
See, so the hot names out there, right? Eric Bieniemy.
He's not going.
He's not going to the Jets. He's going to have so many better
there's no way he's going to go to
No
that
way.
dumpster fire.
No way. I think the Jets are going to hire somebody we haven't heard of. I think it's going to be somebody from college.
As long as he's not coaching in Miami right now, because you gave that a 0%
Yeah,
chance.
he's not going to Miami. No one's Miami. They've already tried hiring from, within the division, and it hasn't exactly gone well. Cough, cough, Bill.
So Brian is going to go with a person that we've never heard before, kind of like a Joe Judge hiring, I'm guessing.
Yes, I would say it's going to be something out of the box in terms of that. Personally, my preference would be somebody from college, someone like a Matt Rule who has showed that he could build a program, that people believe in him. Someone like a Joe Brady. I don't think he's ready yet, but you get the idea. An actual offensive mind. Not an Adam Gase, not a child pretending to be a real man. Three kids dressed up in a trench coat pretending to be a real man.
One more for you. Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott signs in the offseason.
Honestly, one name you didn't even ask me that I really think has a good chance, Arthur Smith.
I think after the last 2 weeks that the stock has cooled down on him a lot.
I think this Jets stock
That's exactly
is rising.
what the Jets
Jets
wanted.
He's been an offensive coordinator for 2 years, which I don't think is enough time. I do fully expect him to go sign with another team. I think wherever he goes, it's going to be a colossal disaster.
Jets.
And now
Jets.
moving on, we have seen the NFC, the rise of the NFC stock in the beginning of the year, and the immediate crash of the NFC stock the last 2 weeks. I think a lot of people here in this room, at least two of the three, think that the NFC is completely overrated. We as Titans fans got to see the glorious display of football that Chicago Bears had last week, where they basically handed the Titans a win. If the Titans offense just sat on the sideline for the entire length of the game, they still would have walked away with a win. How pathetic the Chicago's offense was. I think that you're seeing Tom Brady, who is about 3,000 years old, slowing down a little bit, putting up a whole 3 points against that staunch New Orleans defense.
Hey, it's November, man. Didn't you say cold weather and Tom not going to go well?
I do think that as the year goes on, I was not expecting at November. I was thinking more of mid-November and December.
He's playing in Tampa. That game was in Tampa. Or a dome. Cold weather had nothing to do with him stinking.
But he's a 45-year-old quarterback.
I'm not saying he's not digressing. I'm just saying you can't blame the cold for what happened against
New
Orleans.
Yeah, but he's an old guy. I mean, the hits are going to wear on him.
I mean,
Maybe a little stiff in the bones.
Let's be clear. The entire NFC are a bunch of pretenders.
Well, let's start. Let's stop it there. I think that there's two teams in the NFC that are good, and then I think there's approximately.
Good, you mean contenders?
Well, I mean, one of those teams is going to be in the Super Bowl, guaranteed, right?
Okay.
It's going to be Green Bay in the Super Bowl or New Orleans in the Super Bowl. Anyone outside of those teams, I think you're absolutely insane to think they have any chance of going to the Super Bowl.
I agree.
I don't think that's a controversial statement at all. If you've watched the games, there's nothing there. I don't think Arizona's ready yet. I think Arizona in a year or two, they're going to be in real trouble to play against. But right now, the way it is, especially after the beatdown New Orleans put on Tampa Bay, it's really just those two teams.
Man, the NFL is weird, huh? So New Orleans just absolutely shellacked the Bucs, right? But if you recall, earlier this year, the Bucs did the exact same thing to the Green Bay Packers.
They did.
Which is just showing you that the entire NFC is pretenders.
And
They get smacked by the AFC. Just look at the Bills Seahawks.
The Bills, I think that you got to write the Seahawks off.
that defense is
The defense is the
bad.
worst.
The defense is bad.
Hey, how you liking Jamal Adams, guys?
The defense is bad.
Average safety since he left.
As Russell Wilson
Sucks.
comes back down to earth, there's going to be nothing that separates that team from an average pack.
Well, I mean,
Russell
Russ has to
Wilson can play
score
supernova.
40 He has to score 40 points a game.
And he's
To
done.
win.
And he's done that.
Have
And
a chance to
they
win.
still lost games.
Yeah.
He's still played out of his mind some of these games, and they have lost.
He could win the MVP this year, and they're going to be a first-round exit in the playoffs.
Without a first-round pick.
If they get there,
I mean, they're going to get there.
you think so?
I think hey, 7-8 teams, why not?
Yeah, I guess eventually with the extended playoffs, it isn't so hard to make the playoffs. And now we're gonna move on to our favorite part of the show, the best bets part of the show. Last week, 2-0 on the best bets, 0-1 again on the upset, but
you were going to do TUA and O. Huh?
TUA and O for Tua Tagovailoa, and also the name of this episode, but the TUA and O. But what are you going to do? We were once again wrong on the upset pick. But when I say wrong, I mean we were off by 2 points at the chance of a plus 260. You can never be mad when you miss a plus 260 by 2 points and you have a close game the whole way. And you certainly can't be mad when your other two bets that day pay off big. When we went 2-0, we are now 4-0 on the show for the best bets, but we are unfortunately 0-2 on the upsets. But what I always say with the upset picks is as long as you go 1 for 3, you're pretty much even. So this is our chance to make it up. This is our chance to break even. So I'm going to start with the upset game of the week. I'm going to pass it along to Pat, who knows this game probably better than anyone else.
The upset pick of the week, we are going to pick the New England Patriots over the Baltimore Ravens at plus 260 yet again. Lamar Jackson does not have an NFL arm. He cannot throw outside the numbers. Joe Flacco has an NFL arm. You saw what he did against the Pats this past Monday. Lamar can't do that. Lamar simply will not be able to make any of the throws Joe Flacco did. Stephon Gilmore's coming back. The defense is fine. They stuff the run pretty decently. No one's stopping Cam Newton. Cam Newton's about to run away with NFL Comeback Player of the Year, MVP, the whole thing. He's winning the Super Bowl. The team's 3-5. Anyway, easy pick. Lamar is the most overrated player in the NFL. He stinks. He is basically a running back who throws the ball a couple times. Boring. Pats all the way.
And if you want to take a value on it, I think this is Bill Belichick's third time where he gets to see Lamar Jackson. And if he doesn't figure him out by now, I don't know when he will. I also like the bet because the Patriots are going to be playing for their lives this week. If they don't win this week, the season's all but over. So the Ravens not playing for as much as the Patriots are, and these are two really good franchises, and you're getting the Patriots at an incredible value. Now we're going to move on to the next game, which is part of our best bet segment, where you can get, right now, this is probably a bet I like just as much as the Steelers bet 2 weeks ago. I'm getting Buffalo +2 against Arizona, the same Arizona Cardinals team that lost to the Miami Dolphins last week, and the same Buffalo Bills team that beat the living daylights out of the Seahawks, and I get +2 points. I don't even understand it.
Free money.
If I was a Buffalo Bills fan or a Buffalo Bills player and I saw that, I would be livid. How are we the underdogs in a game that Arizona couldn't have had a worse loss and we couldn't have had a better win? and we're +2. So I think I love that bet. Absolutely love it, and I'm going to pass it on to the boys for our under/over lock of the week.
Well, for one thing, for quick condolences to Josh Allen's grandma. She passed away Saturday, right before their game, and right before he popped off and absolutely destroyed the Seahawks. So, hey, good luck. He's not going to throw for 400 and 3 touchdowns every week, but that's a good bet. One other fun little tidbit, Josh Allen is the first quarterback in the Super Bowl era to have multiple games in a season with a passer rating higher than 140 with 400 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. So that's something. The over-under we're really liking this week is the Los Angeles Chargers and the Miami Dolphins at 48.5. Chargers, they are the king of heartbreak this year. They love finding inventive and wacky new ways to lose. I think this game is going to come down right to the very end. I think it's going to be a shootout. Justin Herbert's going to sling it all over the secondary, and I think we're going to get to see a lot of what Tua can really do. So
I think
I'm going with the points here. Over.
I think this is also going to be the most fun game to watch this week.
Very fun.
CBS game of the week.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very fun. I don't know who's calling it. You probably should just turn off the sound because listening to guys talk about rookie quarterbacks for an entire 3-hour game is going to get very annoying.
For those of you who are not a fan of Tony Romo, he may actually be calling the Masters this weekend. So, hey, good for you.
Good to see Tony Romo really sticking with the sports he knows, right? Yeah. Tony Romo, a fantastic golfer. Last I checked, he has a couple green jackets in his closet.
To be fair, he is a pretty avid golfer. Did a lot of pro-ams.
But you know what? He doesn't have, and he never will have.
Well, the celebrity pro-ams.
But,
Steph does them.
But once again, thank you for listening to the show. I know this one was a little bit longer, but we got into a lot of really good subjects. I look forward to talking to you guys all next week. And feel free to tweet us. We are with 4011 Sports. Any questions, tweet it out, and we'll be sure to get to it on our next show. Take care.